Why don't we jump right in, Tim? So
Sure.
give us a little bit about your background, where you're from, you know, how you found your way to going to college on the East Coast. And
Sure, and I'll give you guys a Cliff Notes version because it's really not that interesting. My parents emigrated here in the 70s from Taiwan. Anyone here from Ohio? That's where I was born. Or Midwest. And relocated to Southern California, grew up in a town called Corona del Mar, California. And then ultimately decided, sight unseen, that upstate New York would be a great place to go to college because the weather's very similar to Southern California.
the surfing's great up there.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I actually wanted to change and ended up at Cornell University for college. And that's really where my career started. I like to tell people I've only had 2 jobs in my life. I feel very, very fortunate. The first one was a company called Blackboard. A couple of us started building software for colleges and universities during our junior and senior year in college, and then moved the company down to DC, where we unified with another company that was kind of doing the same thing, reincorporated both entities as Blackboard Inc., and started growing it in this region.
So I want to stop you there. So let's
Sure.
talk about Blackboard. You were an undergraduate?
Yes.
And so what got you guys thinking about this great idea? And
Yeah,
what problem were you trying to solve?
Yeah, the software we were building, it was neat. I met a bunch of my very close friends today my freshman year in the dormitory. We actually all lived in the same hallway together. And we stuck together the next 4 years. And in between our 3rd and 4th year in university, 2 of them stuck around and were helping instructors in the business school build class websites, manually build class websites. And they're just trying to make a buck. And so
what year was this around?
This was 1996.
Okay.
And so it's a good question, because what had just happened in the university landscape at that point was a lot of institutions were investing a lot of money in infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So they'd have these initiatives called like port per pillow. Every dorm room needs to have an RJ45 connection so that you could plug your Mac, right. Big Mac in and use Gopher to find information. I don't think Netscape was even invented then. So we had that, but people wanted to. There was some demand to put course material online, and they started doing it manually as a summer job. Well, lo and behold, upon returning from summer, the demand was enough where they said, well, we should build a tool to help automate this, just because it's really not scalable for us to be hand coding websites ourselves for instructors. So that's where we all started working on software to let them do it themselves. And these
are for Cornell only classes.
Yeah, these are Cornell only classes. And so the first tool that we built was basically an announcements generator. It was like, if your final exam room changes, how do you, as the instructor, log in and post something and say, here's the new room, and broadcast it out to your students. And so as soon as we deployed that, then we started listening to students and instructors, and they're like, well, what if, can I turn my homework in without having to walk across campus? Can I check my grade? Can I manage an online grade book? Can I download, and it just kind of started going from there. So long story short on that, within that year, we ended up building a collection of tools to support the online classroom environment, packaged it together, and started licensing it to folks like Cornell, and then started selling it to other universities as well.
Is that how you guys connected with Michael and Matt?
With Michael and Matt, yeah, that's exactly how
they were working on a similar problem?
They were working on a similar product, and we had crossed paths with them actually here in DC. I can't remember at what type of what event, but we hit it off very quickly and decided that it'd make a lot of sense. We were graduating anyway and didn't have anywhere to go, so it kind of worked out timing-wise. It made sense for us to move down here and put the companies together and start growing that way.
So how big was your team? How big was their team? And what was sort of the reasons you guys did it? You were competing, but did they bring something different to the table than you did?
Yeah. So their team size was about the same as ours. I think we roughly had about 6 people each. So call it 10 to 12 total. They brought something very important. They had capital lined up.
Okay.
So were
you guys bootstrapped before?
We were bootstrapped before, and we were contemplating a fundraise ourselves. And someone that many people here in this room probably know, Ching Ho Fung, who was the first money in at Blackboard, had said, had told Michael and Matt, I like the space, and I'm willing to invest. Here's what I think, and putting the companies together kind of checked all the boxes that Jing Ho was looking for.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you joined Blackboard, and how did that go? And just take us through sort of the growth.
Yeah, we had a really, this has been written about, and I'll do a much poorer job of describing this, but I guess the couple things that I would say stood out. First of all, we just had a blast. I mean, that was the number one thing that I learned was we just had a lot of fun growing a company. We raised a lot of money. I think it was probably over $100 million in venture and private equity that we raised over the time. And we went through some interesting cycles. We went through the dot-com boom, followed by the dot-com bust. Our business model was more durable than maybe we had even thought, primarily because we were really a enterprise software company at the time, not really a dot-com, right? We had to go to universities and sell a license and then install on campus. I wish SaaS had been more popular back then. Made things a lot easier. So that was the drill, and it helped us really scale throughout throughout the late 90s and early 2000s.
So what is it like selling to a new product to universities? And how long did it take to get?
Yeah, the sales cycle. I mean, so our path was really interesting. We actually, I've been out of the space for a little while, so I'd be curious to know at some point whether or not this has changed. Our go-to-market was actually getting instructors on a class first, and then when you had enough instructors, you could actually go to the department head and say, there's enough instructors using this. And then when enough departments got together, then you could go to the college and then ultimately the university. So it was a very, very sort of bottoms-up approach back in the late 90s. That is definitely not how it's done today. Now it's probably coming in and talking to a C-level executive in IT or technology and a sell. But the price points at that point allowed us to do it. It was a relatively inexpensive purchase. I'm more or less free for instructors until you got to enough scale where you'd license it. So it wasn't really a sell as much early on as just getting adoption and then getting scale and then coming in. And by that time, you had enough usage where it made it easier.
Right, it was easier for the
exactly.
university to buy it itself.
Right, yeah.
And then, so you guys went public.
Yep.
And then
in 2004.
Right. And how did that change your life or your?
It did. So for me, it didn't too much. And the reason why is I at that time was living in Boston. For 2003 to 2005, I was living in Boston, and so I was working remotely when the whole offering happened.
Were you getting your master's?
I was not. My wife was.
Okay.
She's the smart one in the family, and she was there, and I just moved up to be with her. And so it didn't affect me very directly. I mean, I was obviously traveling a lot back and forth. It was certainly a really, really cool event for the company, particularly for those that have been around for the 8-year ride that took us to get to that point.
So, what happened? How did you get the impetus to, kind of move on and start something new? And
yeah, it was really a mix of things that led me to leave Blackboard. I think it wasn't so much related to being a public company at all. More so, it was just related to what I was doing and actually reminding myself or realizing that the most fun time was still those 12 people on day one in one room together, and I just happened to be going through an engagement process at that time to my wife, and I had a long list of new things that I wanted to try, and looking back now, 10 years later, I'm glad I did not try most of them because they would not have worked.
Business ideas?
Business ideas, yeah, sorry. But weddings was an interesting one, right? I was going through it myself, and similar to the Blackboard story, one of the things that was meaningful for me was really being able to connect very directly with the pain points that students at the time and then as an engaged couple we were experiencing. And so I really stepped back and thought about the market a little bit and was like, what's going on in this wedding space? Why are we so frustrated? Why is it so hard? And started building the thesis for WeddingWire.
Fantastic.
This was 2005.
Were there other sites out there at the time?
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're still.
And they weren't doing a good enough job.
Yeah, exactly. We felt like By the way, I put together another team. I have 3 other co-founders too.
Okay.
This one of my things. I like large co-founding teams. We can talk more about that later if you want. But I knew I needed to surround myself with good people. So I found Lee, our COO,
sure.
and asked him to come join us. A couple other folks, our CMO and our CTO. But yeah, what I noticed was that in the planning a wedding, there were lots and lots of companies in the space. Primarily, they were media companies, and primarily the value that they delivered was what we call inspiration and education. I got engaged. I need to know what to do next. Do I want this type of wedding? Do I need a checklist? Do I, it was like organize and then help you design a vision. And then they're like, okay, you go figure it out. And that was the part that really got me was is there a way is there a company or something that technology that come on that actually makes the executing part of the wedding better, and that's really where we focus all of our energy for the past 8 years.
Because that was the pain you were having.
That was exactly
the execution
the pain,
part.
Right? Yeah, I had to. We were getting married in Toronto, so I'd have to fly up. We were both working, fly up, interview like 8 photographers in one day, then 8 DJs the next day. This is on a weekend, fly back down, try and go up the next, and it was just really, really difficult. And so we started trying to think about ideas that would make that execution process easier. And WeddingWire today, for those of you guys that don't know, so we're one of the largest sites in the US. We just expanded globally. We're in 14 countries right now. And the very simple premise is, for those of you that are familiar with like a Yelp or a Zillow, we're a vertical marketplace that's focused in the wedding space. And brides and grooms, engaged couples come to our site because we have more consumer reviews and more user-generated content about local businesses that service wedding than anyone else. So if you want to read reviews about the photographer that you're considering, or the venue, or you're looking for photos, or starting getting the pricing as well, you'll come to our site. It's all crowdsourced, so it's very robust and always recent. And it really helps engaged couples make better purchase decisions. Everyone's going to deploy, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 on their wedding on average. So it's a big ticket item for purchase. And so any way that we can help brides and grooms make better purchase decisions, that's what we're really about. And we connect them with all of the local service providers in any city.
Do you track the volume of business that's transacted through these introductions?
We have not tracked that volume yet. We know that brides, we call it bride purchasing power. So if you think about the fact that there's 2 million weddings in the U.S., the average spend is $25,000. There's about $50 billion spent annually on weddings. Right. We think we have pretty good coverage. North of half of brides and grooms use our site in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not for the whole, deploying all 25,000, but for a good chunk. So, I think it's easily in the billions of dollars that we can help influence.
Right. So the 4 of you guys started in your living room, right? And how did you get the capital to grow the business, and what was your initial?
So our path for launching the company was this. We asked my wife if we could use our living room and threw desks around it. She graciously agreed. Lee, Sonny, Jeff, and I, they started showing up, and we started hammering away on sales, marketing, product. And then we decided we'll build an MVP and we'll test it in Washington, D.C. Just one city. Weddings are very local, by the way, so they all get planned locally. So this geographic expansion made a lot of sense. So city by city expansion made a lot of sense. So we said, we're in D.C. We know all these people. If we can't get it to work in D.C., it's probably a terrible idea. So we went and we raised first round friends and family. It's about $500,000, and built our software, hired a sales rep. Started spending money on customer acquisition, primarily all online. And just tested in DC. Half of the stuff worked, half of it didn't, but enough worked where we felt like we should go raise a more formal Series A. This was early 2007, and then our Series A ended up closing 1 year later in 2008. And for that round, we went to the traditional venture capital landscape. Simultaneously, though, and it just turned out it happened this way, we were talking with a lot of the media companies that were in the wedding space with the pitch of, well, you guys do this really well, we do this really well, there's got to be a way to work together. And long story short, Martha Stewart Living ended up investing and taking our whole Series A round. We signed both a commercial agreement to power all of the local resources on marthastewartweddings.com but they also were a financial investor in that they basically took our whole Series A.
Right, but you have to tell everybody how you connected with their company.
With Martha?
Like, is it true?
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you find Martha Stewart's company?
This credit goes all to Lee, our COO and co-founder. It was like biz dev 101, right? This was 2008. LinkedIn was just really starting to get scale, and he actually just sent a cold email. I don't think they even had id messages at the time. I think you could message anyone you wanted at the time. So he was just blasting messages, and we got to the VP of Finance / Corporate Development at Martha Stewart via LinkedIn. He responded, said, "Hey, why don't you guys come up?" We trekked up to New York and started to get to know the folks, and then a couple months later, we had check in hand and a commercial agreement.
That's the first time I've heard of somebody not getting a warm introduction to get funded.
Yeah,
that's an amazing. It was just off of a LinkedIn email.
Off of LinkedIn email.
That's pretty cool.
To follow suit on that was even more incredible. Is 1 year after the investment, that gentleman, Joe Holland, left and joined us as our CFO. Oh. So we got both money, a commercial investor, and a CFO out of it.
I have to ask you about Martha Stewart. Did she give you any, what's the best piece of etiquette advice you got from her?
Gosh, I don't know if I want to admit this. I didn't get any good etiquette advice. Maybe it was etiquette advice. So imagine this. We're in the final pitch boardroom before they greenlight the funding or not. So we were raising about $5.5 million in our Series A. Martha was going to take $5 of the $5.5 million, and our early investors were going to re-up. And so we're in the final room. So Martha's there. It's their boardroom. Mm-hmm. I think she had like an apprentice show at one point, right? I think it was that same room. And the other cast of characters in there who were super impressive individuals. So we had Susan Line. So she was the CEO of Martha Stewart at the time. She was in entertainment media before, so I think she created Desperate Housewives. She then went on to be the chairman of Gilt Group. I think she's at AOL right now. The president of Martha Stewart at the time, Wenda Millard, was formerly the chief sales officer of all of Yahoo. And we just had some really, really great executives in the room. And so we're doing our pitch, and lunch is delivered. And Martha gets up, goes over to the side, and starts making the salad. I was like, that's kind of cool, getting the
during your pitch.
During our pitch, yeah. It's a dark room, and she's like making this.
She was really tuned into your pitch.
Yeah. And then so we decide that we're going to do a working lunch, and so we're talking, and I just stand up and I just go grab a couple things. It was I'll never forget this. So there was dessert, there was a quiche, and there was salad, right? Oh. And so I just run through, I'm chatting, hands flailing everywhere. I sit back down, and so everyone has food and we're eating, and then she stops. She goes, "Tim," I pause. She goes, "Why did you use the dessert plate for your entree?" And I was like, so I had not even noticed, but I had this tiny plate, and I had stacked the quiche with the salad on top, not even thinking this is a really small plate, but I was just not even thinking about it. So, despite that, they still
they greenlighted.
So I guess it's an etiquette lesson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's a good one. So
I'm the only one that's faux pas in front of Martha Stewart in a boardroom.
So, were they a good investor? I mean, are they?
They're a good investor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of synergies.
They're no longer a financial investor. Yeah. We really valued the relationship a lot. I mean, for a couple reasons. One, obviously, there's the financial component of just capital.
Sure.
You could argue you can get that from other places as well, but we had a commercial agreement. It was very, very important for our company that was a startup to help build our own brand. So as you would imagine in the wedding space, if I were WeddingWire salesperson day one and all of you guys were photographers and I called you and I said, "Hey, this is Tim Chi calling from WeddingWire, I want to tell you about a new offering," you'd be like, "Yeah, I get 50 of these phone calls every week, have a nice day, hang up." After the deal, I call and I say, "Hey, this is Tim Chi calling from Martha Stewart Weddings, WeddingWire, and I'd really love to talk to you." And they're like, "Ooh, Martha's calling me?" I'll hang on to the phone for this one. And it was a really, really great way for us to start, as partners, helping ourselves grow our brand, but also helping them, reach a local
right.
audience.
And subsequently, you've raised even more, like what, 25 million?
Yeah, so we raised 25 million from a private equity firm called Spectrum Equity, a really, really phenomenal firm, Boston, San Francisco based. That was done in September 2012. And those have been over only 2 rounds of funding. So total capital in the business is about 33 million. We've been really capital efficient. We turned cash flow positive in 2011. So we're growing really fast, cash flow positive, EBITDA positive. Still focused on growth.
And the money, was it for acquisitions or just more growth capital?
It was padding the balance sheet a little bit. Early investor liquidity a bit as well. So there's a secondary component to that. But more so, just having a little bit. When we didn't need the money at the time, and they always say, right, best time to raise money is when you don't need it. So we thought we were trying to be opportunistic a little bit and get some money. And we ended up doing a couple acquisitions. We've done 4 or 5 now.
So what kind of things are you looking for when you do an acquisition?
We tend to look for 3 things. We call the 3 T's: technology, talent, or TAM, total addressable market growth. And it's got to check at least one of the boxes, but we really try and check all 3. So we know we're getting good people. The tech is solid underneath, and it somehow helps us further. It helps us, either expand our addressable market in some way, or helps us, grow further in the market.
And do you plan on continuing to buy companies?
Yeah. We will. I mean, where it makes sense. Our most recent acquisition was actually a global expansion, which has been really, really fun to learn about. We have a Spain-based company now that has a very similar product to ours in 12 other countries. So Spain, Italy, France, UK, Portugal, and then Mexico, Brazil. And they're growing really, really fast, and it's a neat product. Right.
So the company is, have you thought about what you're going to do in the next 5 years? Are you looking to go public, or just keep building it and stay private?
I mean, definitely it's heads down execution time right now. We're at a really interesting phase. I mean, we generally feel like from a market maturity perspective, there's still a lot of opportunity. And why I say that is when you look at so we're primarily an ad-driven business. 85% of revenues comes from photographers, venues, florists that are subscribing to our platform. And in exchange, what they expect is door swings, phone rings, right? Leads coming in online. That's how it works. And in order for our business to be successful, we need these guys to be successful as well. And the really interesting attribute of our ecosystem is that our merchants, the photographers and venues, they need to reacquire their customers every single year. It's not like a restaurant where you're trying to show someone a good time and then they'll come back and there's like loyalty. That concept actually doesn't really exist in our space, right?
Well, every single year, given the divorce rate, would it be every 3 years? Or 4 years?
Well, but maybe you won't hire the same people.
It's a bad luck.
So this reacquisition need makes it really important for small businesses to understand how to invest even more so than most, right? Because you don't have a loyalty long-term play out of it. So that's why we're an important part, a good partner for them, is because we do customer acquisition very well. We have tons of brides visiting our site, and so I think there's still a lot of opportunity because if you look at other verticals like real estate in the restaurant space, and in particular auto even, so you look at companies like TrueCar, TripAdvisor and travel, Zillow and real estate. Very similar blueprints, very similar business models, and they're just at much larger scale. And so when we do the math at the end of the day, we still think that there's a lot of room to bring more money into the ecosystem.
Are those the models you're following? Yelp, Zillow,
yeah, we're very,
TripAdvisor?
very similar. Yeah, very, very similar. Very similar.
And how about the competition? Is there anyone out there that you're worried
Certainly,
about?
yeah. So we like to think about it in a couple different ways. One is there's what we call endemic competition, right? Anyone that's looking for brides and grooms effectively is somewhat competitive, although the value proposition they deliver could be different. So I still think that the Marthas of the world, they offer a really, really valuable service to brides and grooms, which is let's design your vision, and they do that really well. They have editors that scour the landscape and tell you that lime green bridal dresses are going to be in season. Like, we don't do that. But on the flip side of that, anyone that's chasing the local ad wallet is also a competitor, right? So you can go online today and decide that you want to open up a Google AdWords campaign and start spending ad dollars. You can go to Facebook now. Pinterest just launched buyable pins, right? So there's a lot of people that are chasing the local ad wallet. We're trying to get it.
What about other marketplaces? Do you feel that in vertical sectors for marketplaces like Yelp or TripAdvisor that it's a winner take all? Like it's either number one or anyone?
I think it's a winner take most. Yeah. I mean, the whole thesis behind these marketplaces, particularly the vertical ones, are that if you can get scale on the consumer side, the scale begets more scale, right? So let's take Yelp, for example. If they're generating 4 million reviews every month right now, Tien, we can go start a reviews-based business, but at 4 million reviews run rate, I mean, it's kind of hard to catch up to that. And that's content that's really valuable. That's what people are looking for. So as you can get scale, you build a moat around your business that makes it more difficult, but not impossible. I mean, we've seen disruption happen in all industries. So that's why I like to say it's a winner take most.
Right. And what would you say is your toughest challenge these days? Because you guys are growing like crazy, right?
So we have about 400 in the U.S. My toughest challenge has been and continues to be scaling the operations and maintaining this corporate culture that I think has really helped us get to where we need to be. And it's not a new problem, I'm sure. Many of you in this room have probably been through this. But just, we want to hire the best people. We want to keep great people around. We want to keep them motivated. We want them to believe in what we're doing, and we want them to grow individually as, as learners, as contributors. But you're also hiring so many people at this point. It's hard to find that balance.
Right. So recruiting and culture, and it's a challenge we're going through. It's a challenge that most people that are growing. So what are some tips? Like what do you guys look for in terms of, recruiting, especially technology talent? That's our biggest challenge.
Yep.
But and then what do you on the culture side? What are you doing to keep that culture? You're 400 people. You could be at 4,000 in a few years.
Yeah.
How are you going to maintain that culture?
That's a great question. I wish I had the answer to that. So on the recruiting side, I mean, we look for really talented people. I mean, we feel like it not only do you need to screen for sort of the job-specific functions, but we're also looking for just general. Are they good leaders? Would you want to sit around when you have a 4-hour layover and have a conversation with them, or would you just want to put in your headphones next to your employee and kind of read your Kindle until the next flight comes? So we're looking for interesting people as well, because I think that ultimately defines the culture, right? It's very organic. People that you bring on board sort of shape what your culture is about. In terms of
a mission-focused culture, like you're helping people have an awesome experience.
It is. I mean, we say, and we're very fortunate, I would say, to be in this position. I mean, we have an opportunity to affect millions of people on the happiest day of their life, right? And so we always think about this idea of like, how do we make their happiest day a little bit happier? And a lot of the stress is all in the build-up to that moment. So if we can do our part and make that 16-month lead up a little bit easier, so that they can celebrate their new day together, it's an important thing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think we can open it up for questions in a few, but I do have a question before we open it up. And I've heard you speak before and read a lot about you, and you read a lot. Are there some books out there?
I try to.
Yeah. Are there some books out there that you would recommend to entrepreneurs?
Sure.
Or what has had the most influence on you?
Most recently, I don't know if you guys are if any of you folks in here study this. I'm just fascinated by this whole newer science of just like behavioral insights, right? Sure. So if any of you have read Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, which is kind of like the new Bible on behavioral economics and behavioral insights. And there's a new book that I was just recommended called Nudge that just came out. Maybe more familiar. Have any of you guys heard Daniel Pink speak? I mean, it's great TED Talk, right? So it's all like, what's the science of motivation, and what, economics as a whole, implies a system of rationality, but when you put humans into it, it's not always that way. And so I was actually just in Boston this weekend at my wife's 10-year B School reunion, and I sat through all the behavioral insight stuff that I could get my hands on, and it's just really, really fascinating field of work. that as an entrepreneur, I think really matters, right? We were talking about, or the professor was talking about the power of defaults and how you can do experimentation, even just like a signature block where it's located on the page. And the way he set it up was he said, everybody fills out tax forms, and most people are honest, but if you're asked what percentage of your home do you use for your office, are you exactly accurate? Are you not? Do you kind of, there's ways to, and said, what do you think happens if instead of signing your tax reform, you give people a piece of paper before they fill it out, and you say, what I'm about to fill out, I certify is the truth. And then you have them fill it out afterwards. And they're doing a lot of studies around that and how something like that actually changes the way people people do things. So it's just really fascinating. So yeah, this whole area is, I think, really, really cool.
How about people? Anybody stand out in terms of being a big impact on your career?
Probably many, for many different reasons. I've always found that I can't name any like very specific sort of just this is one or two people. I'm really fascinated by why people try different things and why people lead in certain ways. Sure. And we're a culture where, and you can ask, I think my staff would agree, we try a lot of different things. Just like there's this MVP on product, we kind of like MVP culture, right? So if you were to go to our office today, you'll see, we'll have like, on our 4th floor, we have these offices, and we're a very open culture, but we just have these offices. There's like a bar that got put into one of them, a massage. People are like, we're trying things. They're not great grand build outs, but we're testing what people like all the time so that, when we start to rebuild the office the next time, we have a better sense of what people actually value. Testing different food, we're testing different programs, we're testing different speakers we're bringing in, and we're kind of always trying things. And so getting back to who, I'm always curious, why did Apple decide to offer this or do this, or why did they structure their product development process this way, and would that work for us? And so we're always testing a lot of different things. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
We have some time for some questions from the audience. Okay, we got some people walking around with some mics, so if you could just introduce yourself.
Hi, great job. Aside from the little Martha Stewart incident.
Yeah, more embarrassing stories?
Biggest mistake you ever made in business?
Oh, that was a pretty big one. If I was the guy that lost funding because I used the dinner plate, that would have done me in. Gosh, there's a lot to choose from. I'd say when we launched WeddingWire, and it was both a mistake but also an opportunity as well. We had a very purist view on how people were going to pay us, how the merchants were going to interact with our system. I spent a ton of energy and resources, as you would imagine, as a startup, which are really, really valuable resources, developing this whole pay-per-lead system for small businesses. So AdWords had come out, and we're like, you know what? People shouldn't have to buy advertising and then not know if a lead's going to get delivered. They should buy exactly what they're going to want, and it kind of like made perfect sense. So we spent a ton of energy architecting this whole really cool system for pay-per-lead. And what happens if a lead doesn't get purchased? Can we recycle it and find the right match? And we had this whole technology that I think, patented called Smart Match. It was really cool. And so we release it, and people are like, I don't understand what you're trying to do right now. And so we're like, okay, that didn't work so well. Spent a good amount of energy doing that. So we then just looked at the market and said, how do people want to buy? Which I think is a really interesting question. And it turns out that subscriptions are still the way people want to buy. In other words, simplicity is really key when you're talking to small businesses right now, and they have to understand and even see very clearly what it is they're getting. Now, this was 8 years ago. I think the sentiment is changing now, where people are starting to demand performance-based products, which is totally the way that it should go. I think companies that are in advertising should take on more of the risk, right, and shift the risk away. But they just weren't ready for it at the time, and so we burned a lot of cycles trying to do something. Maybe, I hope we can reuse it in a couple of years, dust it off and put it back in the wild. Thanks.
Great.
Hey,
Nelson?
Tien, thank
Sure.
you for putting this on. It's another great thing from your staff, and it's also interesting to hear from you. I want to follow up on the what I would call predictive shopping part.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, when you're looking at the psychology of this is kind of a theory we've been working on, is that are people pivoting to something because they're also now seeing maybe a social good tied to it? And is that finally coming into the decision cycle, or especially in your business where you're seeing it's just such a raw exchange? Is a photographer offering anything better besides here's my rate, moving the dial?
So I had two views on that. I mean, I think it's history has demonstrated now that there's demand for companies that can do well but also do good simultaneously. So there's Tom's, and I mean, you can go on and on, right? And it does connect with millennials and consumers nowadays to be able to do that in a very meaningful way with a lot of integrity. For us, it's a little bit different. Our buying cycle, if you want to call it that, we say that in weddings, it's just a very unique shopping experience, if you want to call it that, right? It's super high emotion. It's very high, we call it the high fives. High emotion, high risk, high complexity, high spend, and high certainty. And if you think about all of those dynamics, there aren't many other life purchases that exhibit all of those. The high certainty one is, I'm going to set the date and I will deploy $30,000 by that day, come hell or high water. It is going to happen, right? Like, when else do you have these dynamics? High emotion, I'm only going to do this one time in my life. I should stretch the budget a little bit. This is my day. It's the rationality, is not there as much. I mean, there are many buyers that obviously are like that. High risk. You don't redo this, right? Like, if you come in and you read a Yelp review and you go to a restaurant, and you're like, okay, I didn't agree with the overall rating, life goes on. If you read review or don't have reviews and your photographer shows up and they don't do a good job, you're not gonna be like, oh, let's just go stage that again so we can get photos again. Like, it's not possible in our space. So we have some really interesting dynamics that, I guess to answer your question, I think it makes the emotional, we're not a transactional platform, right? It is an emotional, very curated, highly personal decision that gets made with every purchase. And so it's a little different that way. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So when you're getting ready to hire a very key member of your team, might even be someone for the management team, what is the process that you use that really works best for you?
Good question. So it's apropos in that we just hired a CFO, Mike Beach, who's the former CFO of Blackboard for 9 years, just joined our team, so I'm fresh off of this. The first thing we do is, I think the high level thing is we spend a lot of time with them. And the thing that we look for is a two-way match, right? So we are very open about trying to help people understand both what's working with our business and what's not working with our business. And our theory has just been, well, if they're not up for the task on all the ugly stuff, then they're just, they're not going to be a good fit for us. And so it took us about a year to find a CFO. Spent a lot of time in market, meeting great people. But what we learned through that process, and it probably could have been shorter, is we needed to get a better sense of what we were looking for. And so I think people, particularly senior hires, you start out with this huge list of like, we want to check all the boxes. And then over time, as you get better at it, you try and find the qualities that you're really looking for, and then cut the list down that way. So it just took time for us to iterate to figure out what was really important for us from a skill set and fit perspective. Cultural fit, I think, is still king for us too. So we do these crazy videos every year for our staff. So we have we have a offsite every single year, and the entire executive team, we go through a full production and we actually create a video. Has anyone here seen the movie Zoolander? Is anyone familiar with that? Do you remember the gasoline fight scene where we recreated that whole thing in a gasoline station, in a gas station in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. I mean, we really liked it. So the question that you'd ask yourself is, hey, is the person I'm bringing in, willing to, get dressed up and put themselves out there? Our old CFO was in a Superman costume for a while. I mean, it's, culture is really, really important. It fits really important as well.
Sure.
Hey, great talk presentation.
Thanks.
I'm personally really interested in the area of kind of how companies are using what's called, big data or data analytics.
Yep.
And I'm just curious, I mean, Do you use it? Do you do data analytics? Is there an area where it's been really valuable for you in terms of growing the business?
Sure. The short answer is yes, we use it enormously. It's actually a backbone and sort of one of the things that I think we do really well at our company. When we were 50 employees, that was when we hired our first data scientists. We're 400 now. So it's been a discipline that's been built in from day one, almost day one. 2009 is when we hired our first data scientists. We have full-time data science and data engineering in-house right now. Some of the things that they do, obviously help us understand the consumer insights, right? So they look at, the easiest way to think about it is they literally pull in every single piece of data in our entire, so every phone call that's made to a client, every click on our website, external information, they suck it all in, and then we manipulate it and try and derive insights from it. So anything from consumer insights to pricing. We dynamically price our rate cards right now based on a predictive model of how many leads and how much traffic we think is going to happen in the next 12 months by geography and by category. So if you're a Denver photographer and you're coming to a sales rep to get a price, that price that we're quoted was dynamically priced based on a predictive model, how much success we think we're going to be able to drive to you.
Yeah.
Bill?
Sorry.
Or
Tien?
Yesterday on CNN, they had an entrepreneur from New York who announced that he and his wife were going to pay for all college tuition for all staff in their startup. And they put $1 million of their own money to start this fund with. And I think he did it kind of for two reasons. One is he was an immigrant and, I think kind of first to go to college, and it transformed his life. And secondly, he did it, I think, as a method to retain employees.
Sure.
And apparently, like a couple of the employees actually called their spouses and said, I can't quit ever. And I was just kind of curious, do you, what do you do that, would you consider something like that, or do you do anything where, to try and help kind of retain employees and also kind of engage the community?
Certainly.
Or have some kind of community
Yeah,
benefit?
it's a good question. I mean, so my thought on that is when you think about building culture and retaining employees, you end up having a bucket of money, right? And you're just trying to allocate it in the way that's going to be most useful. And I think it's clear now, to us at least in this millennial generation, that knowledge and learning is a really, really important component of why someone sticks around as a job. Whether that's supplementing education and letting them take courses at General Assembly or paying for college tuition, or even internal training where I'm developing my career and I feel like I'm always learning. That's why millennials stick around right now. Comp and stuff like that, while important, we found is not the ultimate driver for retention. It's this idea that I'm growing myself. And so I think that's just one way to do it. I think there are others as well. I'll give you one example that we do. It was a little bit of an unintentional outcome, but it was beneficial. We were having a really hard time hiring engineers, Ruby developers, et cetera. And just the top of the funnel we just weren't getting enough in. So we hired a Ruby trainer in-house full-time. We're like, we'll just manufacture them if we can't find them. So we have a full-time Ruby coder trainer, a tech trainer. And so what it allowed us to do is go to colleges and pick out people that were still developing their skills and train them in-house. Wow. Now that in of itself, kind of cool. But this guy Peter had a little bit of extra free time, so he just started holding coding classes at night for other employees. We have HTML design classes, CSS. These things are packed. I mean, packed. Salespeople, marketing, it does not matter. These things are packed right now because I think it kind of gets to that idea of like, I can develop skills while I'm in-house. We don't charge anyone for it. It is just part of being there. So maybe different but similar in goal.
Cool. I think we have time for one more. Bill Collins? You don't need a mic, do you, Bill?
No. Thanks, Tien. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Having just gone through a couple of these weddings that didn't fall into that $25,000 or $30,000 category, these were very large destination weddings.
Yes.
And boy, there is a unique set of circumstances surrounding that can dramatically impact all kinds of things. Are you into that? Are you moving into that arena?
Great question. 20% of U.S. weddings now are destination weddings, and growing, actually. I mean, and for many reasons. Costs aside, they're generally a little bit smaller, right? It's an experience, so you're inviting a smaller group, maybe spending more money, equal or more money, but it's a more controlled, intimate sort of environment. Caribbean, Mexico, I don't know where yours were, Bill. Playa del Carmen. We do work in that. We do work in that sphere right now. If you're trying to plan a destination wedding in Italy, that's probably not us. I mean, we do have a company now that can do that. But broadly speaking, it's an area that is the type of wedding that is being done is a growing segment, and so it's absolutely something that we're thinking about in terms of how to service that segment better.
Cool. I'll do the last question.
Yeah.
What one piece of advice would you give to an entrepreneur who sort of wants to be the next Tim Chi and build, a market-leading?
Yeah, pick the right plate when you're in front of Martha Stewart. You know what? I think it's kind of cliche, but very true for me. Just surround yourself with really good people on day one. I think that really exponentially increases your chances of success. At Blackboard, as you guys know already, we had a relatively large sort of team that was together in the early days. I had 3 other co-founders for WeddingWire, and when you can find the right people and get a critical mass and sort of jive in a really good way, I think it's really powerful.
So how did you find this 2 winning founder team?
It was a little serendipity, honestly.
Yeah.
It was a little serendipity. I mean, we spent time together and we got to know each other. I didn't mention this. Today, in our office, we were to visit our office in Chevy Chase, Maryland. The 4 of us, now our CFO and our GC, we still sit in the same room together. When we built our build out, we built a big room and we threw desks around the outside. And we turn around and we're like constantly chatting with each other. It's been 8 years now sitting in the same room with the same guys. And that, I think, kind of speaks to kind of the level of trust, loyalty, but also how we work together and how we understand each other as well. We really do help each other be better people.
Yeah,
so
that's
if we can find it, it works really well.
Well, congrats on all that. By the way, Tim's does a video tour on YouTube of your office. It's sweet.
That's right.
You guys have a nice setup and everything.
We're really happy about that.
On behalf of everybody, we know how busy you are, and we really appreciate your spending the morning with us and sharing some of your thoughts. So let's give it up for Tim.